Just make some things clear, I think. When I speak of the ontological self-determination of people, this is not to be identified with the ontological determination of humans. I use the word people, not the word humans. So we are talking about the ontological self-determination of people. And people, depending on them, there are many different peoples on Earth, and many different concepts of people produced by many different human peoples, and probably by non-human peoples as well. So that's very important to distinguish the notion of ontological self-determination of people from the notion of cultural self-determination of minorities, of human minorities on Earth. It includes this, but it's not just reducible to this. And it follows from this that a notion of a decolonization of thought is different from a decolonization of human thought about colonialism. It includes this, but it's way more ambitious than simply to decolonize Western thought about the thought of other peoples. It's about decolonizing thought in general, not only the thought of some humans about some other humans, but to decolonize the very idea of thought as something which is restricted to human beings, or even living beings for that matter. And thirdly, my third observation would be, I think there is a crucial connection between ontology, this new interest in ontology, and what relation it can have with politics as an activity, as a concern, which has to do with the new situation which in the human species has become an ontological force interfering with the thermodynamic process of the Earth. I'm referring, of course, to the Anthropocene, the ecological crisis, etc. I think it's no accident that we started speaking about ontology, because we cease it being an epistemological species. We have turned into an ontological species, meaning we cease being simply a representational animal who could represent the world in many different ways, but the world couldn't care less about the way we represented it. Now the way we represent the world has gained ontological force, because it changes the world in ways that we weren't able to do until recently. So I think this interest in ontology, or more particularly this connection between ontology and anthropology, comes from the fact that human beings, the human species, has become an ontological component of the fabric of things in general. So I think this is important in political terms as well, because part of the politics of ontology has to do with the politics of relating to our, what used to be called material conditions of existence, which is just another name for ecology, right? And so I think this is an important point. Ontology also has to do with the fact that we live in, now we are part of, we have become ontological beings. We have become an ontological species. We cease being epistemic only species.
So we have a series of... No, sorry. Tony?
Why I think we have to radically break with ontology as much as, and thus, in some ways, my third point, which is not to reconstitute ontology as geontology, but to use geontology as a way of trying to break it. And the reason I think that what you're saying, humans have become an ontological force, is why we have to break with ontology, is that ontology has still within it, no matter if we extend it into rocks and animals and philosophies of entities, a persisting framework of life, and life defined in a specific way, that is life as that which comes to be born, that has the capacity to grow and probably reproduce, although obviously with me, I think I'm alive in this sense, but I didn't reproduce, and to die. And it's finitude, finitude understood from a particular way of being that has informed both our Western philosophies. So, you know, from Heidegger on, even precarity is informed by the problem of life finitude, life understood as that which is born, it can separate itself out. And the question is, how do we break out of, oh, and I should also say the natural sciences, the whole problem of how did life come to be, and is there life elsewhere? That's all about the problem of being born, the problem of zero, how did it happen, the event. And if we're going to understand or break out into these other modes of existence, then we have to absolutely shatter that framework. And thus maybe ecology, maybe geontology, maybe something, but something that moves beyond this obsession in the West with a particular form of extinguishment.
Thanks. So actually, this is going to follow on neatly. I wanted to return to what Philippe was saying about ruins, and to actually mark the achievement, and it's a political achievement, of recognizing that our toolkit is full of stuff that just doesn't work anymore. It put me in mind, this talk of ruins put me in mind of one of Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities, the one in which where people tie strings across the way, they tie strings between buildings for every relationship which is enacted. And then when there's too many strings and there's no space for people, they up sticks, they move, and they build themselves a new city. But I think, from my experience of watching anthropological key concepts, such as knowledge, such as social relationships, just crash and burn in the place where I worked, it was disconcerting at first to realise that everything I'd been taught was useless. And that the further I got away from the field in looking for theory and analysis, the worse than my explanations were getting. That was very disconcerting. I had to fashion a new kind of method. So I think this domino effect that is enabled by the discussions around ontology, of realising reflexively that all of our concepts have played a part in figuring what we've been looking at and why it appears in the form that it does. I think that's really crucial, and I don't want to limit our expectations of the ramifications of recognising just how useless the toolkit is. So the point here is that rather than thinking we're in ruins, let's walk away, let's build a new city, the point is, and I found, that it's in the very moment where our ideas such as knowledge and secrecy crash and burn, that you also get a vision of a city that is beautiful, that is shining, that is in its pristine form, that you can walk around in 3 dimensions and understand the entire cultural metaphysics behind it, that holds it in place, and the moments at which it obviates it just before you might have realised that. So, although it's in ruins, this is the point, and it's a political achievement to realise that things are in ruins. But the point is not to move, the point is to stay, to look, to use the opportunity to catch a glimpse of what has been hidden from us because of our deployment of all of these terms for so many years.
Thanks. Can we open it up a bit more to other questions from the